like to get everyone's attention, I'll call tonight's meeting to order. With that, I would like to call to order the July 18th City of Santa Barbara Board of Harbor Commissioners meeting to order. Ms. Galarte, would you read roll, please? Here.
Jim Sloan.
Here.
Betsy Kramer.
Here.
John Stedman.
Here.
Lang Sly.
Here.
Shoham Yaniv.
Here.
Merritt McRae.
Here.
All present.
Excellent, excellent. Mr. Reedman, any changes to tonight's agenda?
Mr. Chair, no changes tonight.
Very good. This is the public comment section for anything not on the agenda. I see no slips. Okay. We will move to item 1, approval of the minutes and the consent calendar. Is there a motion to approve the minutes?
So moved.
There's a first and a second. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any nays or abstentions? Very good. Did you catch that?
Yes.
Okay. We now have a new item upon us. Item number 2. Mr. Reedman, do you want to fill us in, or what is the process for this one? I'm sorry.
Ms. Galarte can read the
Yes.
recommendation, please.
Yes. Item 2, City of Santa Barbara Non-Discrimination and Harassment Policy. Recommendation that the Harbor Commission receive a presentation from the City of Santa Barbara Human Resources Division on the city's non-discrimination and harassment policy.
Okay, please.
Hi, my name is Wendy Levy and I'm the Human Resources Manager for the city. I won't take too much of your time. I know you're busy. Oh, thank you. Wendy Levy. I just want to give you a very brief overview of our non-discrimination and harassment policy that you see in front of you. This is our actual policy, the big thick packet. You also have an acknowledgement that you will need to sign, and it's not necessary that you sign tonight if you want time to review the actual policy, but it would be great if you do sign. Otherwise, we can get that at any time from you. And then you also have a couple of pamphlets in front of you. Just a brief overview. Council has mandated that each board and commission be provided this overview. We are charged with honoring the laws, both federal and state laws. So this training is just part of that, and making sure that we abide by those laws. The city takes this policy very seriously, and we're hoping that we adopt the tenets of the policy for all of our commissions and boards. If you turn to the actual policy in front of you, we're committed to providing a work environment that's free from discrimination and harassment, and we strive to create an environment that is respectful, dignified, and professional. It's important to note that this policy applies not only to employees, but also to businesses, to our customers, and to our visitor relationships. Discrimination refers to treating people unfairly or disparately on the basis of their protected class. And a protected class can be age, ancestry, color, disability, even a perceived disability, sex or sexual orientation, marital status, national origin, race, medical condition, or religious belief. An example of this would be considering someone's age or their last name or their color during the hiring process. Harassment refers to a range of behaviors that interfere with or negatively affect a person's work environment. It can be sexual or otherwise, such as a hostile work environment. Examples of this might be an inappropriate screensaver, a shared joke through email, or any other visible, physical, or verbal contact that is inappropriate. Both discrimination and harassment are inappropriate in the workplace and should be reported. And outlined in the policy further back is the complaint procedure. A complaint can be formal or informal. It's at HR's purview, which one we take, and it can be discussed with any supervisor, manager, or HR. HR is considered the safety net for the city, and so we always make sure to take those reports and consider them seriously. Retaliation against someone who reports is strictly prohibited. It's a serious violation and is subject to discipline. And we always keep confidentiality to the fullest extent of the law. In closing, I want to emphasize the importance of maintaining a respectful, dignified work environment. It's a bilateral responsibility, both as a commission and as a reporter. So and always you can reach out to HR if you have any questions, concerns, or thoughts. Can I answer any questions at this time? I know it was a very brief, quick overview.
Any questions for Ms. Levy? Please.
You mentioned that we needed to sign something?
Yes, there should be an acknowledgement. It's a single sheet of paper.
Yeah, I don't think we
I don't see
Right,
it.
that was my question too. Where's the
Yeah, I don't think we
acknowledgement?
got it.
Oh.
That's why I asked.
Okay,
So if you have some,
let me give it to you.
Please, please do.
thank you.
Thank you, Emily. Thank you. We can sign these and return them to the harbor office or give them to you? Would
You
that
can
work?
give them to me now, or it's time permits. It's
Okay.
up to you. I'm sure
Okay.
Emily can transport them to me as well.
We'll do that.
Okay.
Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much.
Appreciate it. Okay, we are now at item number 3, our annual July elections of chairperson. Emily, you want to read the recommendation, please?
Item 3, election of chairperson and vice chairperson and commission committee assignments. Recommendation that the Harbor Commission, A, nominate and select Harbor Commission chairperson for fiscal year 2019-2020 per the city charter section 804 and the Board of the Harbor Commission rules adopted September 16, 2010. And B, nominate and elected the Harbor Commission vice chairperson for fiscal year 2019-2020 per the city charter section 804 and the Board of Harbor Commission rules adopted September 16, 2010. And C, review and update as necessary membership on various Harbor Commission committees.
Thank you, thank you. Before we start, I just quickly wanted to say that I am not seeking re-election, and I wanted to thank everybody for my colleagues for their support and staff for their support and help over the years. And with that, I will take nominations for A.
I'll nominate Lance Lang.
There's a nomination for Lang. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Very good. Are there any other nominations?
I'll nominate John.
Did you get that? Is there a second? Very good. Are there any further nominations? Okay. We have 2. We'll vote on them unless there's unless you had another way you wanted this decided, gentlemen.
How about a coin toss?
We can accommodate that as well. Okay. I happen to have a coin.
Someone's got to call it.
Commissioner Sly was nominated first, so I'll let him call it. And if you would witness the, would you like to call it? Okay.
Tails it is.
Tails it is.
So that would mean I won?
Technically, in this situation, it means Commissioner Stedman, yes, so. Okay, so, do we need to vote?
Yeah, we need to vote.
Okay, so I guess that would be that all in favor of Commissioner Stedman as chair, please say aye. Aye. Nays or abstentions? Okay. I think I'm done here.
We need vice chair. Vice chair. I think you have to finish.
Do I have to finish that?
Come on, you're not
All
done
right,
yet.
all right, all right.
Nice try, buddy.
Okay. Are there any nominations for vice chair?
I'd like to nominate Commissioner Sly for vice chair.
Very good. Are there any others?
Do a second.
I do need a second.
I'll second.
Very good. Any other nominations for vice chair? Okay, I believe we have a single candidate. All in favor of Commissioner Sly for vice chair, please raise their hand. Aye.
Aye.
Nays or abstentions? Very good. Do I need to do the committee assignments, or?
You can.
I
if you're
probably,
on a roll.
probably should. Okay. We want to look to our page. Are those the committee assignments? All right. There was one note I had from the commercial fishing subcommittee in that Commissioner McCray deemed it inappropriate or deemed it a conflict for him to serve on that, and so he was going to step aside. I was listed as an alternate, but I know that Commissioner Sly had interest and also experience in that, so I would put Commissioner Sly in that spot. I know these are assignments, so
You nominating?
I'm assigning him as one of my final acts. There we go. Do any other commissioners have any other committee assignments that they are looking to relinquish or that they have interest in a different one? Oh, please, Scott.
Mr. Chair, if I might make a suggestion. We've completed the Marina Key Card project successfully, and I don't think we need to have that committee anymore, so
Very good.
that one's,
Strike that one.
yep.
Okay. So as Ms. Galarty has brought to my attention, we only have 2 commissioners on the Sea Level Rise Adaptation Plan Committee, and
Chair Spicer, excuse me, there's only supposed to be 1 from each advisory board. There was an exception for the Harbor Commission to allow 2.
okay,
Right.
so we're good. All right. Okay. So I don't hear much.
So I would make a motion to accept the changes as stated, adding Commissioner Sly instead of Commissioner McCray on the commercial fishing, and that we get rid of we dissolve the Marina Key Card policies.
Can I get a second on that? Merritt? All
And
in-
one more change,
Oh.
I'm sorry, that I didn't mention, and to remove you as an alternate from the commercial fishing.
Very good. I'll second that. So,
Okay, so we have a first and second?
yep, so we vote on those changes. You want to read that, you say that again so we can vote on that?
Okay, so to accept the change, I move that we accept the changes as stated. Elimination of the Marina Key Card Policies Committee, and on the commercial fishing, we have Commissioner Sly take the place of Commissioner McCray, and that you drop off as the alternate.
Great. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any nays or abstentions? Very good, thank you.
Right now? Okay.
Thank you, Emily.
Okay, so I guess we're transitioning into new business now, is that correct? Okay, so item number, actually, the department update. Right, okay, so item number 4, the director's report, I guess, is our next item.
Okay, well, good evening, Commissioners. I must admit I had a moment of concern there when the chair was elected by flipping a coin. I was hoping the city attorney wasn't tuned in at that point, but thankfully we had a vote actually too. So, first of all, dredging update. In May, the House Appropriations Subcommittee on Energy and Water marked up the fiscal year 2020 bill. And the House bill reflects congressional report for the Army Corps of Engineers Civil Works mission, fortunately by providing record funding for the Corps. Overall, the House proposes to fund the Corps at $7.36 billion next fiscal year, and that's an increase of $357 million, and $2.53 billion over the President's budget proposal. So that's all good news. Just keeping in mind, it's not uncommon to see a low level of Corps funding projected by whichever president's in office because there are so many projects. But frequently the House and Senate will add to that amount, and it comes out higher than the president's budget. And that was the case this year as well. The Corps still faces a nearly $100 billion backlog in projects, jetty construction, marina maintenance, things like that. So regardless of how much money Congress appropriates and provides on an annual basis, there's still heavy competition for Corps money and for Corps projects to get approved. Specifically, and I won't go through the list, but what we're most interested in is the operation and maintenance funding, and that's where we get our funding for dredging our harbor. So it's not an investigation or construction or design or any of that. It's just operations and maintenance. And so that's up $1.84 million from last year. And an important thing to note, too, is that this money, a lot of it comes from the Harbor Maintenance Trust Fund, or Harbor Maintenance Tax, which is money that's taxed on the value of incoming imports into the U.S. And unfortunately, the money always gets diverted somewhere else, so there's a $9 billion surplus in the Harbor Maintenance Trust Fund. So based on past practice, it's expected that our harbor will receive $3.62 million for dredge funding. And the next one is Council adopted a 2-year financial plan for 2020 and 2021 and an operating and capital budget plan for 2020. So it's a 2-year budget, 2-year financial plan, but we, as you know, get a crack at in the middle to make adjustments and so forth. The Council had 7 special budget review meetings, and the Council Finance Committee also had 5 additional meetings on the budget, and it was finally approved on June 18th. So tentative items for the August meeting would be proposed changes to waterfront parking regulations. We have a meeting on that coming up on Monday. And fiscal year 2019 budget performance to see how we did against our actual budget results versus what we projected. So with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Maybe this is a question more for Carl than for you, Scott. Is there any thought or any possibility there's going to need to be more dredging because of climate change and perhaps increased storms and so forth? I was wondering if that is being considered, or if that's even a possibility.
Chair Stedman, Commissioner Kramer, There are expected changes in wave angle, and therefore perhaps a little bit more sedimentation. It's kind of speculative and out there a ways. As it stands right now, the Corps is going to let a new contract this summer, and it'll still be for 120,000 cubic yards per cycle, so that volume won't change. One thing they've been very good at is when we've exceeded that amount in the channel, they have been very good at reprogramming funds to the harbor or getting emergency funds. So they've got a good track record with that, and I think that's what they propose for this next 3-year cycle. So every 3 years, they kind of take a look at it again. But if things were to change the next 3 years, I think we could ask for more funds. But so nothing planned at this time.
Great, thank you, thank you.
I had a question. So when is our contract with our dredge contractor up? Is that this year?
Chair Stedman, Commissioner Sloan, it's up. It's already done.
Right.
It's paid out, and so they'll advertise a new contract, I believe, in October.
Okay.
So it's the beginning of their fiscal year, so it sort of coincides with that. Whenever you start a cycle of a 3-year contract, it's a little tight between advertise, award, and begin construction. But we like to push off construction until the beginning of December, so it shouldn't be too bad. There's no significant changes, and there is money, even if we wind up with a continuing resolution, which we probably will. We're still on pretty solid ground.
And the harbor's in pretty good shape right now?
Yes, it is. They did some extra work last spring.
Right.
And, the summer, the sedimentation is very slow.
Great. Thank you.
Mhm.
Good evening, Mr. Chair and Commissioners. I have a quick business services report, and this month it's focused, both items are regarding parking. As many of you know, parking in the waterfront, public parking lots has long been in high demand, and the increased popularity of the Funk Zone, the reopening of Lower State Street, and the explosion of stand-up paddleboarding have placed additional pressures on our parking lots. And so many weekends throughout the spring and summer and early fall, when the weather's nice, you'll find that our Harbor Main lot reaches capacity, and there will be long backups, and oftentimes we'll have to shut it down until people leave the parking lots and we can fill those spaces. So as the popularity has increased and the pressures on this finite resource have increased, so have the complaints to staff, both from the public, slip permittees, businesses, and visitors, and pretty much everybody else in between. So in order to look further into this matter, the Waterfront held a public workshop on the 13th of June, and it was in our Marina Center classroom. We sent out Blackboard Connect to over 1,400 individuals. We advertised on the various marina gates and throughout the harbor. And it resulted in well over 50 people in attendance, which was great. We had a great, very active group of folks. We split those people, those 50-plus members, public members, into 5 different groups in an effort to at least allow everybody an opportunity to speak their mind. And this was all, at each of these groups, we had staff taking down notes, so we were just there to listen. It wasn't a solutions-oriented workshop. This was strictly to gather input on what's going on out in the lots. And we asked them 3 questions. Regarding waterfront parking, what is currently working well? And we did have quite a bit of those, so that was good to see. We also had quite a bit of what needs to be fixed. And then the 3rd question was what needs to be left alone, which, when you look at it, it's a little bit confusing, so we'll tighten that up next time. But anyways, what we've done is we've worked on number 2, what needs to be fixed, and we compiled a summary. We went in that weekend and put all those comments together and prioritized them based on how many times it was stated at the table, individual tables. And we plan on unveiling those results and giving a brief overview of those results at the Harbor Commission Parking Subcommittee meeting on Monday, July 22nd at 4 p.m. And that'll be held in the Santa Barbara Maritime Museum's Munger Theater. And as Scott mentioned earlier, so if anybody's out there and is interested, please come to the meeting Monday at 4 p.m. in the Munger Theater. We will be issuing a staff report tomorrow, a very detailed staff report as far as the meeting and then possible operational changes, and some of them we've already instituted, and then also possible or proposed ordinance changes. So that will be coming out tomorrow, and our Harbor Commission Parking Subcommittee will receive that. It'll also be posted online, and we'll again post all the marina gates. And I'm hoping to get out a Blackboard Connect as well to get the word out. So very important. If people have something to say about parking in the waterfront, please make it to that meeting. Moving along on that same line, proposed parking legislation. The city, as well as the waterfront department, obviously pay close attention to various bills at various levels of government and possible impacts they might have on operations. One current bill that's making its way through the state process is Assembly Bill 516. It was put together by Mr. Chu up in San Francisco, and it proposes to remove tow authority for 3 key parking functions. One is vehicles parked over 72 hours. You wouldn't be able to tow those anymore. Vehicles with registration that's been expired for over 6 months, we would not be able to tow those types of vehicles anymore. And in vehicles with 5 or more parking citations. Obviously, this could have a big impact. Again, I just mentioned we have a finite resource. We're very popular, and the area is very popular. This could impact it even more. We are currently working with the city is currently working with the California League of Cities, as well as the California Public Parking Association, who actually brought the bill to our attention through our parking supervisor, Cesar Barrios, who participates in the California Public Parking Association. There is an attachment in your staff report. We developed an opposition letter for Mayor Murillo, and she signed that opposition letter and sent that up to Sacramento. So we will keep you updated as to the fate of AB 516. We have heard some more recent news that there's a push to carve out coastal cities, coastal areas as far as this legislation. So we're paying close attention to that. Obviously, we would support that. That would include us. But as a whole, we just don't think it's a good bill for the city of Santa Barbara and beyond. So we will definitely keep you apprised of what's going on there. And that's my business services report. I'm happy to answer any questions.
I'd like to ask a question about the towing. Are there historically a significant number of towing events in the harbor lots?
Chair Stedman, Commissioner Sly, there's a fair amount. I wouldn't say an overabundance, but we are quite regular with our 72-hour citations, and we do tow when it's appropriate. Obviously, our first mechanism is to try and contact the people, but we do try and tow. I don't know. I don't have a number off the top of my head. We could get that to you. It's not daily, it's not weekly, but it does come about, and it would impact us. Because now, if we're not able to tow that vehicle that's been parked for over 72 hours, it's just going to sit there and take up space and deny people access to the coast as well as our facilities.
I have a question about it. Do you know when the bill is going to vote, or when they'll be voting on it?
Chair Stedman, Commissioner Yaniv, it's going through the process. It's towards the latter end so it's been through a number of cycles, and it looks like it's going to pass at this point. So it's towards the tail end, but I think a lot of opposition is picking up. So you can never tell until the very last vote. So we'll see where it goes. And again, if they can maybe structure some sort of carve out for coastal cities, that would be very helpful for us. But we'll keep you posted.
I checked today, and I saw it had passed the Assembly. It's in the Appropriations Committee of the Senate, so it's pretty far along.
Yes, I have a question. I've heard and observed that there are a considerable number of vehicles in our harbor parking lot that are there on a permanent or semi-permanent basis as either storage or used as storage. Does anyone in staff have an estimate as to how many spaces are taken up by vehicles of that class?
Chair Stedman, Commissioner McCray, without stealing the thunder of tomorrow's staff report and Monday's parking subcommittee meeting, we estimate that there's, on a low day, at least 25 vehicles that are in there that are just being used for storage, and it varies and can get up to 50 quite easily.
Good evening, Chair Stedman and Commissioners. Last May, we presented a project related to the underground fuel storage tank removal and replacement. The project has potential for considerable disruption to the harbor community, so we convened a public meeting to start to get the word out. And unfortunately, it was not very well attended, unlike the parking meeting where we had 50 people. We had fewer than 10 for this, but they were all tenants and the people that are going to be impacted the most. We talked about construction phasing and duration, continuity of harbor operations and public access, and I'll just go briefly through that presentation right now for anybody who wants to look at this again, and we'll continue reaching out to our tenants. Right now, there are 4 existing tanks located just west of what we call the 125 building in the middle of Harbor Way, go through a couple of pipes out to the fuel dock at the end of the city pier. Existing underground storage tanks are single-walled, and the Health and Safety Code, Chapter 6.7, requires all single-walled tanks to be replaced with double-walled tanks by 2025. It's regulated by the county's Certified Unified Program Agency, CUPA. So our fuel dock tenant, Santa Barbara Fuel Dock, Inc., has been working closely with them and getting all the appropriate permits for this project. And for that matter, I think most of them have been obtained. The limits of construction, as I mentioned, this kind of outlines where all the work's going to happen, and I'll talk a little bit about some of the details. Encon Technologies is a very experienced company that designs and develops these projects and actually carries them out on the construction side. So Santa Barbara Fuel Dock, Inc. has hired them to do the job. It's about 90 days, and there's 2 main phases. One is tank removal, and the other is tank installation. For tank removal, there's 3 main tasks: staging, demolition of the existing tank slab area, and excavation for removal of the tanks. Temporary fencing is going to take about 2 days, and it's going to fence with screens to prevent distraction and obstruct view of the ongoing construction. The areas around the fish market and Channel Island Outfitters will be limited to allow for construction, and I have some maps that will show you just what those limitations will be. But foot traffic and access will be provided around those areas during construction as well. The second main task is demolition of the existing tank slab. It's going to take about 5 days. It's going to be loud and disruptive. There's saw cut, jackhammer, and continuous trucking of debris exported will mean for very busy traffic and very limited access to the area. The third main task is excavation for the removal of the tanks. That's taking out all the backfill, and actually the tanks themselves will have to come out. Large excavators and large equipment will be used during this particular task. And there's designated staging areas I'll point out as well. So this is kind of what it looks like, a giant crane removing a giant tank. This is the one time where we'll have to entirely close the harbor commercial area just to get these tanks out. It's required to be done in the day, and you have to keep everybody away. So we'll talk a little bit how we're going to maintain continuity of operations, but there will be 1 day on the tank extraction side and 1 day on the tank installation side where everything will be shut down. So phase 2 is the installation of the tanks. Similar to the tank pull, the tank set requires a large amount of space and large cranes, and there will be a single day where everything's shut down again. The backfilling this tank takes about 5 days. It's continuous trucking for the import of fill, and the tanks will be set in place. They get filled in water and backfilled so they don't float. It's going to be quite an involved construction project. This part, the final part, the commissioning of the tanks themselves, installation of the tanks and the piping, is about 20 days. It takes a long time, but it's really confined to just the area directly above the tank. So at that point, we'll be able to shrink the staging site and the fencing considerably and hopefully get back to normal operations. Nevertheless, it's going to take, probably 20 days to do all that. A lot of this work can be performed at night, so we'll even be able to shrink down the staging area and construction area even that much more to sort of resume, get back to some semblance of normalcy. The tank removal is about 22 days. The tank installation is about 35 days, where we can reduce the construction site after about 10 days. So the project at this point is proposed to begin on October 21st. So that's a full week after the Harbor and Seafood Festival. Things start to slow down in the winter. The fall's quite nice in the harbor, and it can be, but we do need a little contingency. We need some extra time just in case there have been contaminated soils in the area. It's all been remediated, and the site's been closed. We think it's clean, but just in case there's extra remediation necessary, we want to be going into the winter as opposed to coming out of the winter. So there's some discussion of doing the work in the fall, but we felt that could be problematic if there was extra work where we'd be bleeding into June and July, and that would really be unfortunate. So harbor operations, there's three main things. The first is fueling. Truck deliveries will be at predetermined times. They'll drive a truck out to the end of the fuel dock. It's called several thousand gallons. The fuel dock, they kind of know when the fishermen are coming in and the locals are coming in, so they're going to kind of fix times that they'll get the word out to everybody. There'll also be special deliveries for large vessels, some research vessels and some larger fishing vessels stop by occasionally and need extra fuel. And it'll all be done off the end of the city pier. We've done this once before, and it worked just fine. It's safe, and it's allowed by Coupa and everybody else in the fire department. City pier offloading. The city pier is a very, very busy place, and especially in the evenings and when the sea's calm and everybody's out fishing. So trucks are going to be staged in designated areas. It won't be kind of willy-nilly like they are now. We're going to try and eliminate all parking between the 132 and 125 buildings. That's about between the Harbor Market building and our building, the administration building. And then we'll do traffic control as needed, and we're going to prohibit any large trucks like truck and trailers because there'll be no way for them to get in and back out. As far as restaurant supplies and other deliveries, we're going to limit the access to the harbor commercial area. They'll be staged in designated areas as well, and we'll try and coordinate the deliveries with the construction activities. For example, we'll try and get the Giordano's of the world and the Michelin's to do everything before perhaps 10 a.m. in a designated area so that they'll be able to have the deliveries and we'll continue operations. But after 10 a.m., they won't be able to do it because of all the construction activity and other actions, other operations. This is just a rough schematic of what the access will be like. It'll be two ways. We're probably going to close the harbor way right around here. We'll probably have a turnaround, so we want to use as much parking as we can. But all of this parking all along here is going to be eliminated. So that's quite a bit of parking to lose. This will be a staging area. These are going to be Baker tanks for dewatering. The whole site has to be dewatered, and it fortunately can be discharged into the sewer system, but it has to be dewatered and filtered briefly first and foremost. We'll probably maintain staging in this area, and we'll also going to work with the fish market, Channel Islands Outfitters, the dive shop, and others, and try and get some back of shop or back of office operations. Try and direct the public there because we want to keep them as open and accessible as possible. Trucks will drive out. All deliveries for picking up fish and urchins, they're going to have to go out and back through this area. So it's tough to do. It's tough as it is to go around the building, but with just this one way, there's no way a large truck will be able to get in there. As far as public access is concerned, all businesses can remain open during construction. There will be limited parking. There's going to be designated pedestrian access. We're going to put signage all over. Businesses are open this way. And push this out on social media as well to let people know what's going on. Know we're open for business and direct people how to get to those businesses. This, once again, kind of shows just how narrow it's going to be. There's going to be about a 5 to 7 foot path along the fish market, Channel Islands Outfitters, our maintenance shop, and getting out to the alley here. But the alley will be open. On the alley, the Sushi Go-Go, all these areas will be accessible, and we'll be able to do a fair amount of staging for deliveries and whatnot in this area where they do now. And like I said, we're probably going to take our vehicles and put them in the yacht club parking lot. It's hopefully the case, so this can be opened up for more public access. The project's going to be disruptive. It's going to be the most disruptive project in decades. We plan on having another meeting in September, roughly a month before we start. October gets pretty busy ramping up for the Harbor and Seafood Festival, but we're going to do our best to kind of push this out so people know it's coming. The tenants that did attend the meeting had some really good suggestions. Brian and I were there, so we're going to talk a little bit more about the details of how people will get to the harbor and patronize those businesses and get their deliveries and get the fish offloaded and everything else. So it's a bit of a work in progress, the final details. Santa Barbara Fuel Dock Incorporated has been very cooperative and very helpful. So hopefully it'll just be a big project that we knock out as quickly as we can and not have to worry about it again for another 30 years. Does anybody have any questions about this particular project before I move on to the next one? Okay.
Thank you for your report, Carl. I'm assuming that the travel hoist that lifts the boats out of the water will fit through there as well?
Commissioner Stedman, Chair Stedman and Commissioner Spicer, that's correct. If you look at this right here, this is just wide enough for the travel lift. So here's the entrance to the boatyard. So this is really going to be designated for the travel lift and also for trucks picking up product from the city pier. That's why we don't want to have any parking in this area at all. We'll probably stage trucks here, and that's, I think, the best we can do to maintain operations.
Very good. Thank you.
In this map, you show that access gate, excuse me, the access gate there, and you talked about having a roundabout or something there for traffic to turn around somewhere in that parking area. How would you get into the yacht club, or if you were going out on the city pier or something like that? Would there be somebody stationed there? Or?
Chair Stedman, Commissioner Sloan, the access gate is shown on here because we may, at night, just close the area. During the day, the goal is to try and have a turnaround right here. The yacht club will be open, so we need to have yacht club access, and we need to have access for trucks. We're not quite sure how we're going to do that, whether or not we're going to have a parking monitor out there full time. It's one of the things we're going to figure out to the best of our ability. I think we're going to start overstaffed and with traffic control, and then reduce that staffing as necessary, because there's a lot going on, and we do want to maintain as much access as we can while completely limiting access because there's a huge construction project going on. We just can't have people wandering in that area. And one truck stuck right here, we've seen it happen before. It'll shut the place down for a half hour, 45 minutes as they try and get out.
Yeah.
So.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
Yes, I was wondering when the last time a project to change out tanks was done, and mostly I was curious as to how well we know what's actually down there. For example, it's clear that there are times where the water table comes up high enough to potentially float those tanks. And it would be nice to know if we're going to encounter some kind of weighting measure that was taken in order to hold those down that's going to extend this project.
Chair Stedman, Commissioner McCrae, I do know the exact date. I don't have it in front of me. I think it was in the 80s when they did it last time. There used to be a diesel tank out here, and it was removed, and there was some contamination associated with that. The whole site has been remediated. There's 4 tanks right here now, and we've gotten a closure letter from Coupa, so it's been remediated to the county's satisfaction. It's been monitored for years. As part of the development and design of this project, the contractor has monitoring wells. They've monitored infiltration rates, so they know approximately what it's going to take to dewater. Groundwater is kind of at the bottom of the tanks, static groundwater. So there is the potential for some floating, but they do this all the time. The biggest potential for floating is when they put in the empty tanks, and before there's backfill, and they're kind of weighted down and packed in place, and they fill them with water. So they put them in, they fill them with water, put in all the backfill, put in all the piping, put the concrete cap on, get rid of the water, and put in fuel. So that's how they keep it from floating up. But these tanks are, I think, maybe 6 or 8 feet in diameter, and groundwater is probably 6 feet deep, more or less. So it's not groundwater that shallow, even at the highest tide, because the infiltration rates or the permeability of the sand is such that it's just not instant exchange of water in there. It's kind of relatively slow. Therefore, they can dewater it as well because the infiltration is relatively slow, and they have the box siding to keep the water out. So we trust they know what they're doing, and they've got a good design and a good plan.
Great. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
So what do you think the your best estimate of the end-to-end time of the schedule, excluding unpleasant surprises?
Chair Stedman, Commissioner Sly, the 90 days takes us to the middle of January. The reality is we expect to finish before the holidays. So that's the goal. They kind of think they can do it in closer to 60 days than 90 days, but we don't want to create unreasonable expectations. If you add all those days up, it's January 17th or something like that. But the contractor, they do this a lot. They think they can knock it out quickly. We'll push them, believe me. We'll make sure they're working every day as hard as they can. So, the waterfront slip permits were recently revised with new rules and regulations related to the marina submetering program. Every slip permittee must renew their permit prior to charging them for their use of electricity beginning next month. We've rolled this program out, and the first folks will be billed starting next month. Slip permits are usually signed in person at the front counter, which is almost impossible to do all at once, considering there's 1,148 slips and well more than 5,000 slip permittees. So rolling this program out and renewing the slip permits at the same time was a challenge we hadn't quite figured out. Fortunately, the city has just contracted with a software firm called Seamless Docs. Seamless Docs is an e-signature online signature company, similar to DocuSign. If anybody's done any real estate investment recently, they've used DocuSign. And this is going to be the first project that Seamless Docs will be used in the city, and I'd like to show you a brief demonstration. So if you go to the city's website, we have this slip renewal button right here. Renew your permit. And you wait a couple of seconds, and up pops the permit. So our permit has been put into a form that's compatible with Seamless Docs. It's uploaded onto their website. There's only 6 fields that need to be filled out: the slip number, last name, first name, cell phone number, and email. And there's an NA email for some folks that don't have email, and the registration and documentation. All other information is on file at the harbor. So all we need to do is just have folks fill that out, read the rules and regulations. There's been only a couple of changes. We tightened it up a little bit and added the ability to charge folks for electricity. They sign in 3 different places. Boom, boom, boom. Sign here again. And then a release of liability. The last time we renewed slip permits is when we added some release of liability and indemnification language, which I believe was maybe 10 years ago, Mick? Something like that? Yeah. So it's really easy to do. It took me less than a minute to do. You do need to attach photo ID, driver's license, passport, or some other government-issued photo ID. The challenge here is slips have some value in Santa Barbara, and we want to make sure the people that are signing the new slip permits are indeed the people on the permit. So we are going to require a photo ID. Each permittee, even on the single slip, will fill out 1 permit. These get pushed right back to us. They hit submit and sign with the attachment. Goes back to our office. We verify and authenticate who is signing it and make sure they're on the permit. We sign right here. It goes right back to the slip permittee. They get a copy. We have a copy in electronic form. And this is going to just save hundreds, if not thousands of hours. It's really easy to do. It's really quick. It's legal. The security for this site has been vetted by IT. They're a state-of-the-art company, so we're kind of excited about rolling this out to expedite and facilitate the signing of new slip permits. That completes my presentation this evening, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
So on that, how do they attach the ID? Will they be able to send it without that? Because
No,
in looking at that form,
they won't. I'd have to go through it for you. Once you go through it, you'd have to fill out each field and you kind of go through it.
Right.
It's pretty straightforward and pretty simple.
But sending the photo ID.
You attach a photo ID. You can take a picture of your driver's
Right.
license with your phone and upload it that way.
Okay, and so that has to be uploaded before you can
Submit.
complete the
Yes.
form? Okay, good. Thank you.
Yeah, now I'm done. Yes, I am.
Good evening, Mr. Chair and Commissioners. I have 3 short items tonight. 2 of them are about recent harbor events. Haven't seen you in a couple months, so we had the nautical swap meet and 4th of July, and I've got some slides to show you at the end, but I'll wait till the end after my brief presentation here, and we'll look at those. Some of them are pretty cool. So the first item tonight is sort of a combination of I'm going to blank that out so we're not staring at a blank screen. A combination of employee recognition and fire prevention. So we have positions, unheralded positions, unsung hero kind of positions that in the operations division, it's the wharfinger position. These are hourly positions. We have 2 individuals who serve as wharfingers, and they work from 11 p.m. to 4 a.m. every night, every week, 365. And their primary jobs are fire watch and general security. They're not enforcement officers, but if they see suspicious stuff, they're able to certainly contract harbor patrol immediately. And we go down to the harbor in the morning, or we visit the harbor at whatever time, and it's a beautiful place. We all love it. That's why we're employed there, why we're all interested in it, and we recreate and work and enjoy it. But what we don't realize is there are very small activities, very small actions, small observations sometimes that keep the place the way it was. And it was the exact kind of observation that was made by one of our wharfingers just after midnight on May 27th. His name is Tracy Ireland. And Tracy was out on the wharf, and he smelled some smoke. He heard some crackling. He smelled smoke, he heard crackling, and then he saw flames. And this was on the west side of the wharf, and the wind was blowing west to east. And for not having seen that, for not having been alert and doing his job, as minor as it might seem, we could have had a huge conflagration on the wharf. In fact, we could have lost the wharf. And so after Tracy saw that, he acted quickly, got a hold of Harbor Patrol, and a joint response from Harbor Patrol squirting water from beneath the wharf, and the fire department coming and squirting from the deck of the wharf and removing deck boards to make sure they had completely contained the area and there were no hot spots left. They were able to extinguish what could have been a horrible catastrophe. So we come to work on May 28th, and everything's great at the harbor, and quite frankly, it's because this one individual was sharp-eyed enough in the late night hours to smell, see, and contact. And so I think you join me in saluting and commending Tracy Ireland, not only for his work that night, but for the wharfingers in general who tirelessly over the years have provided safety and security out on the wharf every night, 365 a year. So that's that part of it. The likely cause of the fire was a cigarette butt. And so just by way of information on the fire prevention front, cigarette butts are a real problem. Of course, we have a new no smoking ordinance in the city. It's not legal to smoke anywhere on the sidewalks in the harbor or in the public parking areas or on the wharf. And wharfs can go up like tinder, and especially with a cigarette, if it rolls into the cracks between the deck boards and lays there in the duff and dust between the deck boards, and as it's slowly burning down, that's a major, major concern. We've had a lot of trash can fires recently where people flick cigarette butts into the trash can or flick them on the deck. And I'm not here to point or cast blame or what have you. I'm just here to remind the commission, remind the public that all it takes is one incident like that to destroy one of the gems of this city. It's happened before. It could happen again. So this is, as I said, this is a combination of a fire prevention reminder and recognizing the work that the wharfingers do, in this case particularly Tracy Island on night of May 27. So I do have a couple of events to report on, as I said I would. We had a great nautical swap meet on the 25th of May. We had a record 77 vendors out there. It keeps going up every year. We have about 85 or 90 designated spaces, and we have to be very efficient to get folks out there at the end so that we can reclaim our parking area, because I wouldn't be surprised if it's fully subscribed next year. It's a really cool event. You'll see some pictures here in a little bit. So that was especially successful. We saw folks selling. I was down there all day with several of my colleagues. Everything from surfboards and anchors to paddleboards, kayaks, chain, nautical art, dive gear, shark's teeth, you name it. If it has anything to do with the sea, folks were selling it, oftentimes between themselves. But that's one of the wonderful, quirky cultural aspects of that event. Also, we had a great 4th of July celebration. Thousands of folks came down to the waterfront, and they enjoyed a family-friendly atmosphere, which we believe at the staff level in the last several years is a function of two things, really. Number one, the entertainment on West Beach has really taken intentionally a family-friendly turn. The music and the patriotic music and other bands that are up there, young kids in bands and what have you, is really the centerpiece of the entertainment of the day. And also, the police department has been cooperative with us to an extraordinary degree and partnered with us to have a presence all day long down there. And it just having them present just makes a huge difference. The day was a beautiful day. The fireworks were spectacular. I'll show you some pictures. And overall, it was an extremely successful event. So we want to thank our nonprofit partners who put on the entertainment on West Beach. And we want to also note that this was simulcast on KGEE, and we had thousands of hits on our website, not unrelated to the good work of Chris Bell, our new administrative analyst, who tracks that stuff and gets the word out through social media. He's a social media expert and a world-class videographer, and that combination is invaluable to the waterfront. So with that, I would like to show you a few slides. They're kind of fun. So here, Chris actually got up in the man lift and took this shot of the harbor, the nautical swap meet, and you can see it goes all. You can see where my cursor is. It starts way over here to the left, and it goes all the way over here to the right. And folks have got stuff laid out and hung up and displayed in every manner, and there is just a ton of nautical gear. I like this shot. It's good resolution. He's good at what he does. So our colleague, Samantha Casey, the Harbor Operations Assistant, undertook the job cheerfully, as you can see, of distributing boater education kits and having boaters fill out quizzes and helping them learn, all the rules of the road and safety tips for boating locally. And the kits were great. She handed out the kits. They're free. They came from the Division of Boating and Waterways. There are oil-absorbent pads in there. West Marine was kind enough to add gift coupons to them. There were all kinds of various boating-related information in there, safety tips mostly for various kinds of vessel activity. She enjoyed it. And in the background, we dished out donuts and fruit, care of the Harbor Merchants Association, who were the beneficiaries of this event, which was very inexpensive for vendors to participate in at $10 a stall. This event, as always, as we have mentioned to you before, is combined with a hazardous materials turn-in. These are the folks from Clean Harbors processing hazardous materials. We had a good haul. I don't have the manifest in front of me, but it was a good combined haul of varnish and paint and oil and various hazardous materials that people got out of their dock box and distributed at this site. These are just random pictures of the swap meet. This is kind of I mean, you can see at every one of these tables there is a variety of knickknacks and gear, and you can see in the background fishing poles sticking up. And if you want to get a paddleboard or you want a fishing rod, I'm telling you, this place can't be beat. I hope all the retailers aren't mad at me, but you can't beat the deals you get here at the Nautical Swap Meet. This is just a fantastic. I have hanging from the rafters in my garage, I have rods and reels I've collected over the years from this swap meet. It's fantastic deals. This is just a reflection of the good cheer of the whole event. It's a wonderful community event. When people say, how much is the orange or how much is the donut, and we tell them free, their eyes bug out, right? They can't believe it. So it's just, from the Harbor Merchants Association's generosity to the whole spirit of the event, it was a really great time. This is a classic, one of those things where there's everything on one tarp here. You've got a helm wheel, cat heads, line, all kinds of boat rigging, and a lot, just fantastic deals. Stainless steel and aluminum cleats don't rust very easily, and so they may be a few years old, but the prices are unbelievable. You might even pick up a beautiful dory like this one that was on display at the Nautical Swap Meet. So the 4th of July, so this was what the daytime looked like on West Beach. You can see the shadows are getting long and it's starting to get near the evening. And this is what it looked like along the boulevard where vendors were selling food and other things. This is the stage at West Beach where where the entertainment took place. Fantastic music. It was a patriotic theme, family-oriented. It was just a wonderful, wonderful scene. And here are the fireworks. Some people say it was the best they'd ever seen. I couldn't disagree with them, but the wonderful thing is we hear that every year. So that's what's awesome about it. I hope it is the best they've ever seen every year. Clear night, got lucky on the weather. Now, check this out. This is really cool. Okay, you see this here? This was in the late afternoon, just, as we were getting close to the fireworks, packed, thousands of people. Watch this. If I can get it to work here, this is really cool. This is 9:30 the next morning, same place, which is a testament to the hard work of the parks staff and maintenance staff. They turn it back into its natural condition overnight. So that concludes my report. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Mr. Croman, thank you so much for that. And I wanted to echo your kudos to Mr. Ireland, and appreciate that. And it brings up a topic that is a pet peeve of mine, and cigarette butts. And I'm just curious. I've been out on the Stearns Wharf a number of times recently and have seen numerous people smoking. And I'm just curious if Patrol has had many contacts with visitors smoking out there.
Commissioner Spicer, we have. We do the best we can. As we speak, this week, we have received and are installing the no smoking signs per the city ordinance. Signs, you hope people read them, they hope you obey. A lot of people who visit Stearns Wharf in the summertime aren't from local areas. Many of them are from other countries where smoking is more prevalent than in coastal California. So it's a challenge, okay? The folks that really spot it the most, quite frankly, that are out on the wharf the most, because we have limited patrol officers, as you know, can't be everywhere all the time, are Carl's maintenance staff. And they do a great job of gently contacting people and reminding them, because they're there to help protect the facilities, and at the same time, they're not enforcement officers, so it's a delicate balance. But they do a great job talking to people. All I can tell you is we do the best we can, and we're still trying to find ways to make it better.
Oh, thank you. And please know, this was not a criticism. It was more a matter of I hear you loud and clear.
Sure,
that I realize most of the perpetrators of smoking on the wharf are not locals, and I get that. So thank you.
Sure.
The city has a pretty substantial grant from stopping smoking, and it pays for the ambassadors along State Street and so forth. Is there any way of working in cooperation with them, of having some of those ambassadors come out onto the wharf and regularly? And
My understanding is the ambassadors are pretty busy, and the length of their jurisdiction is to Lower State Street. I will follow up on that.
Okay.
Maybe we could, talk to the police department and see if we could get some of those folks down onto the wharf. I believe we've tried before, and and like I say, their limit is State Street, and they concentrate on the downtown corridor, if you will. But I will certainly make that inquiry.
Because the grant is specifically to stop people from smoking, and what they do is they go up and tap people on the shoulder and so forth and say, no, you're not supposed to smoke. And there's some question or whether this is being used sufficiently in terms of stopping smoking, but that's another question.
Sure, we will look into it and report back to
Okay,
you on that.
thank you.
Sure.
Yes. So we've kind of landed with both feet on the back of the people who smoke. I just wanted to drive the point home, kind of already knowing the answer. But periodically we do have fire starts that occur on Stearns Wharf, and a very, very large fraction of those are due to smoking. It's not that that's the easiest target. It's actually the target. And I was wondering if you could actually, if you had any kind of numbers with respect to what the fraction of fire starts that were smoking versus any of the others.
Commissioner McCray, I don't have exact numbers, certainly not at my fingertips, and sometimes if they get extinguished quickly, it's typically not identified, but it's usually considered to be a cigarette fire. We had a horrible electrical fire in the past that burned down a huge chunk of, 16,000 kV line, was involved in a wharf fire out there, but a vast majority, you used the word fraction, you said large fraction, but a vast majority of the fires we have out there, and we put out probably, I want to say at least a half a dozen trash can fires or smoldering deck boards in the last 90 days. I want to say at least a half a dozen, probably more. So we're on it. We're vigilant. I don't have the numbers, but you're absolutely right. It is without question a majority of the fires we experience out there, and thank goodness we catch them early, are cigarettes.
Thank you very much.
Sure.
Half a dozen in 3 months?
Probably more.
Wow, that's a huge number.
Yeah.
Thank you very much to Mr. Ireland for catching that. I wish there was a good official way to recognize his true heroism.
Thank you. I think your comments do. Thank you. Yes, sir.
And what happens after 0400?
I think they call it the A shifters. The first shift of maintenance staff is out there and relieves them. So there is consistent 24-hour coverage out there.
Thank you. Thank you, Mick.
Sure, my pleasure.
So we have full-time coverage.
Yes, we do.
Excellent. All right. I guess
I have just one comment on
Commissioner
that.
Sloan.
Is there something more we should be doing or we can do to prevent those or stop it? I mean, it just seems like if we've had that many, and we've all known about it, it's been an ongoing problem forever, and not forever, but it's been an ongoing problem. I mean, is there something more that we can do or should do? I mean, I don't know. I'm just throwing
Mr.
it out.
Treiberg wants to weigh in, I think.
Well, Chair Stedman, Commissioner Sloan, we had 3 fires in 2 days, I think, one in the middle of the night recently. Reached out to the fire department. Their fire prevention officer contacted Mix Crew. We have all brand new signs that have been put up. I think some of those signs were funded through this grant program that you speak of, Commissioner Kramer. My staff, they do what they can do. As Mick mentioned, it's usually our staff are the first ones on site. But, we're open to suggestions. It's just, if you were to go down today or yesterday, there's so many thousands of people on the wharf. It's tough with 4 folks out there to monitor and observe everybody.
Yeah, I understand, but the ambassador program, it seems like the wharf would be an area to focus on because
I believe some of the ambassadors are going down there now. I don't know if it's a focal point, but it's certainly worth looking into to see if they could go more frequently.
The signs, I assume, are only in English or English and Spanish, perhaps.
English.
Okay, yeah. So maybe something through the Visitors Bureau. I mean, I'm just throwing ideas out. I don't know.
Commissioner Sloan, we've looked at multilingual signs in the past for these kinds of things. We have them in certain places, like on the breakwater when there are large swells. They're in English and Spanish. But once you head down that road, it becomes a where do you stop kind of thing. And I don't want to sound like the scared bureaucrat who runs afraid of, litigious individuals who might sue you because you didn't put their language out there. But there are a lot of languages, and people from all over the world visit. Brian reminded me too, the merchants also do a great job. They obviously self-interested, but for the right reasons. They do a great job of looking for and spotting, reporting deck fires and especially trash can fires. Recently, we've had a spate of trash can fires mostly.
Yeah, I'm not advocating multi-language signs because, one of the great parts of walking down there on a summer day is you hear 10 different languages and people visiting from all over the world.
Right.
So that would be an endless list. And so,
right. And we have a lot of signs on Stearns Wharf.
I just think it's maybe something we should...
If there's a better operational widget, we're open to hearing it because I think we're all of the same. We're all singing from the same sheet of music here. Anything we can do to stop the smoking and get the fires off of Stearns Wharf.
Great. Thank you.
Sure.
Yes, thank you very much, Mick. And so now we move to new business items, right?
Yes.
We have 3. And Emily, would you like to read item number 8 under new business?
Yes. Item 8, vessel speed reduction incentive program in the Santa Barbara Channel. Recommendation that a Harbor Commission receive a presentation from NOAA on the vessel speed reduction incentive program in the Santa Barbara Channel.
Good evening, Chair Stedman, Commissioner Sean Hastings. I'm with the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration's Channel Island National Marine Sanctuary right here in lovely Santa Barbara, about 20 miles offshore from where we're sitting right now. And I appreciate the interest in this vessel speed reduction program that the NOAA and Channel Island Sanctuary have been running with our partners at the air districts as well. And so if I may, you have a couple binder items that were provided to you to give you an overview. And in the next couple of minutes, I'm trying to summarize about 10 years of effort to protect endangered whales and our air quality in our community here. And so I'm going to introduce to you 2 programs, 2 approaches that we've been using, and then would be happy to entertain any further interest or questions you may have. So we are fortunate in this community, and most of us are aware of the bounty of wildlife, marine wildlife right offshore. It is one of the reasons that the Channel Islands have been designated federally and internationally is due to this amazing wildlife and the high productivity, the rich fisheries right offshore. So we have a national marine sanctuary, the islands are a national park, and the entire area is designated as a biosphere reserve, a UNESCO recognition of the richness of this region. What makes it so amazing, every year we have the large baleen whales that come into the channel, typically in the late spring. I'm talking about endangered blue, fin, and humpback whales, and I want to emphasize the status as endangered. These animals, numbered in the tens and hundreds of thousands, and have, largely due to hunting, were reduced to hundreds and a few thousand animals. In our region, we actually have the largest concentration of blue whales that visit us in the summer, upwards of 200 animals that can come into and around the channel. There's no longer commercial hunting of these animals in the U.S., which is great. We are not seeing them rebound as quickly as we had hoped. And the last and really greatest remaining threat to these animals are ship strikes. And we're talking, these are large animals, and so it takes rather large ships to impact these animals. So we're talking about the container ships that ply through our waters on their way to and from the ports of Los Angeles and Long Beach. Very important commercial trade, of course, and at the same time, very important animals protected by numerous federal laws. And we've been trying to address this issue of ship strikes for over 10 years in this region. The easiest, most obvious, and clearest way to protect the animals is to separate ships and whales. Unfortunately, the whales go where the food is. That's why they're here in the summertime, and they're feeding on krill And the humpback whales also feed on anchovies and sardines. And they follow the food, and if the food is in the shipping lanes, that's where the animals are. These ship captains, they're driving enormous ships, 800 to 1,000 feet long. Most of the time, they probably can't even see these whales in front of them, especially if they're coming through at night. So this is an unfortunate circumstance and collision between two ocean giants, ships and whales. We're not going to move the shipping lanes out of the channel. They've been there for over 25 years. We did adjust them slightly 5 years ago. We moved them 1 mile away from the islands toward the mainland, and to reduce the overlap of the feeding grounds of these animals. Again, that's the single best way to reduce the ship strikes. The next way is to slow ships down. And when you slow ships down, you're not reducing, what you're reducing is the likelihood, the risk of a lethal strike. I like to make the analogy that it's similar to school zones when you're driving through a neighborhood. You're not traveling at highway speeds through neighborhoods, especially in school zones. You slow down. And it's the same deal with the whale areas in the marine sanctuary and in the channel. So we, learning from other, this is not unique to our region. Whales are hit by ships around the world. And there's been a lot of work to reduce the ship strike threat. And so we've learned from this, the approaches of others. We've run a lot of these ideas, a lot of the research through our Sanctuary Advisory Council. We've had their interest, their ideas, and we've used that input to shape our policy strategies. One, to move the lanes, and secondly, slowing ships down, we've used a voluntary approach. And every season, when the whales show up, we issue a local notice to mariners through the U.S. Coast Guard. It's broadcast weekly. We also broadcast on NOAA Weather, Weather Channel 3 on the Marine Band radio. And the notice goes out, whales are present, please slow down to 10 knots. The average speed of ships in our channel is between 14 and 16 knots. And so we're trying to reduce that speed to 10 knots, which is still a safe speed for the ship to navigate, and does reduce the likelihood of a lethal strike by 50%. It's rather significant. And so the voluntary approach, and we've put out a chart, we put out this notice, and we've been doing this for 10 years, and we've had very, very poor cooperation. I don't say compliance. We use compliance in a sort of regulatory and true enforcement connotation. We're looking for cooperation on a voluntary basis, and we're, at best, we're seeing about 20% of the ships slow down to 10 knots. So that we continue to do that. It's the right thing to do, is to keep advising the shipping companies to slow down. But about 5 years ago, we realized, let's try a different strategy here. And so, borrowing a tool from the ports of LA and Long Beach, they incentivize ships to slow down as they come into and depart the ports to reduce the air quality, the air pollution impacts, to improve air quality and reduce the air pollution impacts from the ships coming into and out of our country. And so what we've done is to employ an incentive-based approach with a combination of positive public relations for companies that cooperate with us, and modest, rather minor financial incentives to slow down when they're passing through the Santa Barbara Channel, and some of the traffic that is south of the channel, we also incentivize if they cooperate, slow down to 10 knots. The program is in its 5th year. We run this concurrently with our voluntary program, and I'm happy to report that it has worked very, very well. The first year, only limited by budget, we were only able to incentivize around 30 ships. And I would have been pleased if one ship had cooperated, just to see if this market-based approach worked. It worked very well. The second year, we had over 50 ships cooperate. The third year, we were up close to 150 ships cooperate. And last year, we tweaked the program a little bit, and we asked the companies that wanted to participate that we would be looking at their entire fleet. And we wanted to see how much of their fleet would slow down over the course of the whale season. And I'm happy to report that we had closer to 300 ships slow down in the program. The basis for the funding has come from a variety of sources, including the Santa Barbara Air Pollution Control District and Ventura County Air Pollution Control District. because we're fortunate in that when you slow a ship down, you reduce the emissions immensely, thereby improving the air quality and reducing the air pollutants. And I'm talking about air quality that impacts all of our lives, nitrogen oxides, sulfur dioxides, particulate matter, and greenhouse gases as well. And so we actually can measure the amount of pollution reduction, and it is a staggering amount, and impressive enough where the air districts are deeming this as one of their more successful air pollution reduction strategies, even at the modest scale, the minor number of ships that are in the program. I cannot put a specific number on how many whales have been saved. That's harder to measure. Ship strikes largely go unknown because when whales are hit, they're negatively buoyant and likely sink and drift away. We became aware of this problem 10 years ago when we had 5 blue whales in the span of 3 months wash up on our county beaches and in the region. So we know what we see in terms of our whales hit by ships is really the tip of the iceberg. We still, on average, there's 1 to 3 animals a year that are determined to have been struck by ships, and that may seem like a low number, but when there's only a few, or in the case of blue whales, 2,000 animals left, every animal counts. And these animals can live up to 70, 80 plus years, and when you lose a female, that's very impactful to the population recovery. So there is great interest in this incentive-based approach. We do not have funding identified for next year. We are following Senate Bill 69, currently moving its way through California, where this program has enough notoriety where Senator Wiener from San Francisco area has suggested this legislation that would make this program still a voluntary program, but implemented under the California Air Resources Board, which is the parent agency to our air districts, and it would institutionalize this incentive-based approach. We're very excited about this, and there's a similar bill moving its way at the federal level that would bring this recognition program and would make it a permanent recognition program through the Sanctuary Office. And while a lot of people like to focus on the incentive, the financial part, the truth of the matter is it's the public relations, the positive public relations, where we recognize these companies. 7 companies in year 1, we're at 15 companies this year. And these are global giants. These are the Maersk, Evergreen, Hapag-Lloyd. They control over 85% of all container traffic worldwide. So we have the attention of the industry. They are working with us, and with that, pleased to entertain any questions, and happy to keep staff apprised of our effort here to protect these great animals off our coast.
Questions? Good. Commissioner Spicer.
Welcome, Mr. Hastings, and as a former Sanctuary Advisory Council member, I applaud the work you guys are doing, and I love this. I'm curious, if a ship slows from 14 knots to 10 knots, how much time does that add to its delivery going through the channel?
Chair Stedman, Commissioner Spicer, good to see you again. It depends on how much distance they slow down for. The whale advisory zone and the incentive-based program, we're asking ships to slow down for about 100 nautical miles. And so we are adding a few hours to their trip. And we did consider the economic impact of that. And if it moves the needle, sometimes it actually moves it down so that they actually have cost savings because they're burning less fuel, which is 60% of their operating costs. And to put that in perspective, when a ship leaves an Asian port to make its way to the ports of Los Angeles or Long Beach, or Port Hueneme, I should mention Port Hueneme is a very important port in this region. It's it's actually more like a 12 to 14 day trip. So, asking them to slow down for an extra 3 or 4 hours, we feel is a negligible impact. Really, the economic effects are barely measurable, but the effects on our air quality and whale populations are really important.
Great, thank you.
I have a question. Who enforces, or not enforces, but do they voluntarily notify you that they've slowed down, or is it radar enforced, or how?
Mm-hmm. Chair Stedman and Commissioner, I can't see your last name, I'm sorry.
It's all right.
We each large ship carries a transponder, just like aircraft do, and this is referred to as an automatic identification system, or AIS. And these transponders transmit many times a minute their speed, bearing, and who they are. And this is collected through a series of radio towers up and down the coast. And we ingest this data, process it, and we can determine have they cooperated with our 10-knot request by processing this AIS data. And that's what we've used to determine cooperation with the voluntary approach as well as the incentive-based approach, and why we can compare the programs very closely to determine that the incentive-based approach really is working well.
Excellent. Commissioner Sloan?
Hi, Sean. How are you?
I'm well.
So when you were here last time, what was it, about 2 years ago or 3 years ago? You mentioned that around the Port of LA, there is a zone where they have to slow down.
Mm-hmm.
And so there was some talk about adding to that, but it sounds like you're continuing with the incentive-based approach, and that seems to be working pretty well, I would guess.
Yes, Chair Stedman and Commissioner Sloan, good to see you as well. And we actually have just borrowed their incentive-based approach and program, which extends 40 miles, nautical miles from the ports. And that brings them right to around Point Mugu. And then from that point up to Point Arguello is where we're asking the ships to slow down. The ports have a incredible program and track record with over 90% cooperation with their incentive-based approach. The major differences are that the ports are revenue-generating entities, and so they can offer tax breaks, wharfage reduction fees, they can offset the financial costs of a ship visiting or penalize a ship that doesn't cooperate. Unfortunately for our coastal communities here, we're just on the ship highway, and they're just passing through. It is worth noting that the Air District's interest in this is very important because the ship emissions contribute over 50% of much of the pollution in our counties, and we are not meeting some state and federal thresholds. This will be legislated eventually if we do not bring those air emissions down, thus the interest from the Air District perspective on this incentive program.
Good. That was one of the things I was going to ask you, because I remember last time it was a fairly high percentage of pollution that comes from the ship. And then when you said 300 ships this last year, it's 300 out of how many?
So, Chair Stedman, Commissioner Sloan, during the annually we're seeing upwards of 4,500 to 5,000 ship transits a year through our region. And during the whale season, probably closer to, it's about a 6-month season. So you can half that, it's a couple thousand, 2,500 ship transits. We realize 300 is still just a fraction, but that's largely based on the available budget we have to offer and incentivize and to entice companies to participate. Recognizing that first year, we offered an incentive of $2,500 for a transit, one-way transit if they slowed down. And we had such high demand to participate, we started, this was interesting market strategy. We reduced our incentive amounts and demand kept going up to participate. More and more companies, more and more ships willing to. We created a financial award program where we just had a pot of money and we said the more miles your fleet slows down, the more you're eligible to win. And we had great awards. We had a big press event and ceremony. And these companies are genuinely interested, more so in the public recognition and the positive media than a check saying thank you, and we're, modest amounts, a couple tens of thousands of dollars for the best performing company. And so it's really more about positive PR.
Good. Thank you.
Commissioner Kramer.
Thank you for the report. I asked to have it, and I'm glad it was here, and so I appreciate it. I shared it with some friends that you would be speaking this evening, and the question that I was asked to ask, so I'm asking, are the emissions that are being reduced actually being measured? Do you have measurements for them? These are being estimated, or how is it coming about?
Yes, Chair Stedman and Commissioner Kramer. In the materials provided to you, you can actually see in the color brochure the amount of, and it's measured in metric tons of pollution reduction. And so, for example, in 2018, 266 tons of nitrogen oxide and over 8,000 metric tons of greenhouse gases were reduced. Now, the county does have, and this, I'm a little out of my lane here, and I need my air district partners next to me because they handle the air quality, and I talk about whales. But there are gauges that do measure pollution, and then, of course, we'd love more gauges everywhere. But with the information they do collect, they can model, and then we actually look at the load of each ship and the emission and pollution associated, or emissions associated with that particular ship. We have a contracting firm that actually does this for the ports of Los Angeles and Long Beach, and it's quite impressive the metrics they can come up with. And the shipping industry does not dispute or refute or argue against the numbers that we're putting out there, because this is the way the ports are also measuring it.
Thank you.
Excellent. Commissioner McCray?
I've been watching this particular program grow from the very beginnings. And it seems it's a great program. And it sounds like from what you say, there's an opportunity to grow it almost 10 times as much and get 10 times as much benefit from it. It sounds like there are multiple benefits, both in the way of preventing lethal ship strikes and also air pollution benefits, some which sound like they're badly needed, legislated in fact. What can people do that want to help support this program to help support it?
Chair Stedman, Commissioner McCray, good to see you as well, sir. And your participation on the Advisory Council is noted, and the support for the program we appreciate. What we've been thinking next steps are from a staff perspective is that the shipping companies, we have their ear, and they are working with us and they are participating. I honestly feel, and as you said, what can people do? I think the next step is to recognize our dependence on imports. And the fact that everyone, and especially in coastal California, we love to know that our food and our water and our air is clean, and our products we buy are sustainably sourced and organic cotton and fair trade and all the wonderful things that we're moving toward to be good stewards and good consumers. And I think what's often missing, and I wasn't aware of this, and I'm paid to work on these issues until dead whales wash up on our beaches, is that the way things are shipped to us also has an impact on our environment. And so asking ships to slow down is really like asking the bus driver to slow down. We need to talk to the riders. We need to talk to the companies that use these ships. And in talking to companies, you're talking about consumers who want the products brought here, but I don't think would really care if it took 4 hours longer to hit the shelf. It's not going to impact consumerism, really. And so the Targets and the Walmarts and the Adidas and the large companies that have most of the capacity on these ships, I feel consumers, we as consumers, do have a role to play in saying, as we have in so many other instances, I do want clean, green products, and I'm okay if it takes a little bit longer to get here because it's safer for whales, it's safer for the air that we all breathe. And a third conservation benefit is the reduction in ocean noise, which is a whole nother topic. So I think we, as consumers, really can have an impact by telling the companies, hey, thanks for organic everything, and it's okay if, I do want the ships to ship it slowly. The companies, they're just meeting our demand. So, and they've said it's really not an impact to us. We're just moving product.
Thank you very much.
Vice Chairman Sly.
Thank you. The numbers on the effectiveness of these programs is impressive, especially in the 2018 numbers here. Yet, I think you said you still only had a 20% cooperation rate. So as these things keep improving, do you have a sense of what number you could get to without having legislation?
Chair Stedman and Commissioner, there has been interest and we are getting pushed to regulate speed. and it's how NOAA handles the issue on the East Coast. Even with regulation, we're not getting close to 100% compliance. And so I'm not convinced regulation is the only answer. I think a combination of programs like we're exploring here really can get us closer to, and I'm looking at the ports of Los Angeles and Long Beach as the benchmark. With over 95% cooperation with ships slowing down, we know it's achievable and attainable, and we know they can do it and will do it. And so we're on the right path. It is a long path, but I think we can get there through continued persistence and maybe the legislation formalizing the program at a statewide level. Because these ships in Wales move on up and down the coast, and my colleagues off San Francisco are using the same programs. And so it's really something that, at Classic Santa Barbara, where we germinate something here and the rest of the world watches. And so it's just a matter of time before we get to, I think, the success level that the ports have seen.
Thank you. Excellent. Any further questions?
Tide is turning. I think that's great. Thank you for the report.
Thank you very much,
My
Sean.
pleasure. Thank you.
Very informative. I guess we'll move on to item number 9 under new business.
Yes. Item 9, proposed lease amendments with the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration for mooring the research vessel Shearwater. Recommendation that Harbor Commission recommend City Council approve amendments number 1 and 2 of lease agreement number LCA 03165 with the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration for the approximately 2,160 square feet of water space at 4B Entai for mooring the 65-foot research vessel Shearwater, allowing for a 5-year option and a new lease rate of $2,100 per month beginning January 1st, 2020.
Thank you. So, who is going to present? Mr. Bossi.
Good evening, Commissioners. Thank you, Emily. So this is a proposed lease amendment with NOAA Shearwater. This was not planned, that Mr. Hastings would be here as well, but I'm glad he stayed. Stick around. One of the Marina 4B Entai berths was developed with the intention of leasing to the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration for the Channel Islands National Marine Sanctuary's 65-foot research vessel, Shearwater. And the Shearwater has occupied the berth since 2008, and they occupy this berth right here. And in the center, so this is some of our large vessels. You have the Shearwater. Then next to that, you have our Marine Spill Response Company, MSRC, who is in the harbor and goes up and down the coast dealing with oil spills. And then next to that, we have one of our local tenants, the Azure Seas or Celebration. So a number of months ago, this is a lengthy process, but a number of months ago, NOAA representatives came to the Waterfront Department, and prior to their lease expiring at the end of this year, they asked for a 5-year lease option, an amendment to their existing lease. So with this particular lease amendment, the term would begin on the 1st of January 2020 and expire on December 31st of 2024. So that's the first amendment. The second amendment was regarding the base rent. We added an additional $100 on there, and they were fine with that, and that was to cover the costs of their utilities, which are generally lower than that extra $100. But they were having to pay in 2 different checks, and with the federal process, it just takes a little longer. So this will consolidate those and make it easier for them to get their rent to the city. They are a tenant in good standing. We're happy to have them here. And it's not, I didn't just say that because Mr. Hastings is still here. That's the truth. And with that, I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Well timed.
Commissioner Sloan.
How does that lease rate compare to the other 2 slips that are similar?
Mr. Chair, Commissioner, so it's pretty similar. You know, one good thing about having tenants like NOAA is they bring an added benefit, especially when we go to get our dredging funding. To have another government entity within our harbor is a plus for us. So, you know, adding a few $100s here and there is one thing, but the benefit of receiving the $3.6 million in core funding is significantly better.
It's
but
competitive.
they're close, yeah.
Okay, great.
Any other questions?
I'd put forth a motion to approve.
Do we have
I
a
would-
second?
I would second that.
Excellent. All in favor? Say
Aye.
Motion approved. All right. I know we have a marathon meeting going on here, so let's move along to item number 10.
Item 10, proposed license agreement with the California Sea Urchin Commission, Santa Barbara Chapter. Recommendation that the Harbor Commission review and recommend to the City Council approval of the 5-year license agreement with the California Sea Urchin Commission, Santa Barbara Chapter, formerly Commercial Fishermen of Santa Barbara, Inc., for the berthing of the commercial fishing boats on the north side of the Cabrillo Landing in the Santa Barbara Harbor.
Thank you, Emily.
You're welcome.
You again, Brian? Excellent.
Good evening, Mr. Chair. With your final item of the evening, we have the California Sea Urchin Commission, Santa Barbara Chapter. As Emily stated, they're formerly known as the Commercial Fishermen of Santa Barbara Incorporated. They have maintained a license agreement for dock space on the north side of Cabrillo Landing since 1987. And here is an aerial shot. This is the area we're talking about. Right here, it actually can fit 9 vessels. Again, the north side of Cabrillo Landing. The terms of this particular license agreement is a 5-year term, $1,627 per month. They do receive a base rent adjustment, and that's in line with, it's adjusted at the same time and in the same percentage as the increase to the harbor slip fees. So this year, as of July 1st, it went up 1%. As you know, that's usually 2% a year. It's scheduled to be 2% next year. The site, again, is a 143-foot side tie on the north side of Cabrillo Landing. They are authorized up to 9 vessels to use the site. All vessels must be continuously maintained as operable vessels, and they are required to maintain standard City of Santa Barbara insurance requirements, and we make sure that they do that. The California Sea Urchin Commission, Santa Barbara Chapter, in their current form as the commercial fishermen, are a tenant in good standing and a very important part of the harbor, and we're happy to see them continuing or proposing to continue leasing the space or having a license agreement here in the harbor. So with that, I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have tonight.
Vice Chairman Sly.
So this is the north side of that pier, correct? Just the north side of that pier.
Santa Barbara always confuses me the way this place is set up. It's actually the west.
I mean the west side, I'm
but
sorry.
we refer
Yeah,
to
I'm
it
confused.
as the north. So
it
is the north. It's this part right here, yeah.
It's both sides of that.
Yeah,
Okay.
oh, sorry. As far as, it's these vessels here. There's also usually one there. I think you can see it. So there's 5 on this side and 4 on this side. That's usually how they stack up. So 9 total vessels.
Okay, so I'm still confused. It's both sides of the pier?
Yes,
And that is a total of only 143 linear feet?
If you take the space from here and walk it down to the end of the space, that's 143. So essentially you could also say it's double it, but we use 143.
Okay, so it's actually 286 linear feet of side ties that you're talking about. Is that correct?
That's correct. If you were to walk around the entire,
Okay,
yeah.
thank you.
Any other questions? Thank you for being directionally correct, Brian.
I'm directionally challenged. I'm sorry, especially in this town.
I'd move to approve. Second.
All in favor? Say aye. Aye. Motion approved.
All right.
All right, and I think we've expired all new business. Is there a motion for adjournment?
Yes.
Meeting adjourned.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Dream of the land my soul is from. I hear a hand stroke on a drum. Shades of delight, go hue, rich as the night, afro blue. Elegant boy, beautiful girl, dancing for joy, their lip could whirl. Shades of delight, go hue, rich as the night, afro blue. Lit it, lit it, lit it, little deal, little lit, go ahead and bet the bill and lit it now. That's the but I get it all. La 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 we la that's when buddy la when we dream, go ahead and dream of a land la 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 la